in 1982, I wrote Steve Smith a letter through Modern Drummer magazine. And, you know, you never know if that's going to hit. Some weeks later, I went to the mailbox, and lo and behold, there was this big, thick envelope from Steve Smith. And he wrote me back a handwritten 6-page letter, including transcriptions from the Jean-Luc Ponty record. And, you know, you couldn't found a happier 12-year-old boy. It's one of the sweetest things in life is to have some of your heroes become friends. It's overwhelming.
Ladies and gentlemen, Todd Sucherman. Todd, welcome back to Drumeo, man.
Thank you so much, Brandon. It's been a great week, and it's been amazing to be back here.
Yeah, I think this is the 4th time we've had you here, so
4th time.
It's like Todd is our longtime Drumeo friend. It's great to have you back,
Well, you're
man.
more than friends. You're all family now.
That's
at
right.
this point.
That's right, and to the whole Drumeo community, really. It's like you're all over Drumeo, the rock drumming masterclass, the drum solo on the mountain, your spotlight show. It's Todd is everywhere on Drumeo, so it's so good to have you back.
Thanks, man.
And for any of you who don't know Todd Sucherman, please go check him out online. Todd, you've been playing with Styx for 26 years. You have a new record out called Crash of the Crown, and you actually just played the title track off of that record.
That's right.
And you also recorded your own solo record in 2020 called Last Flight Home, which is
the great
incredible.
Experiment.
Yes. Oh, it's incredible. Like, Todd, you do all the vocals on that, you play all the drums. And did you have anyone else help you on that record?
Yeah, J.K. Harrison, he did most of the heavy lifting on that. He played almost all the other instruments and background vocals along with me. But yeah, that record would never have happened without him pestering and cajoling me into doing a record. And I said, like, man, that's very sweet that you think that I can do that. And he said, I've heard you sing. I know you could do it. Let's do it. So finally, I found myself in Los Angeles for the 8 days with like 4 days off, something like that. And I said, okay, let's get together and hang out and see what happens. We just started writing songs, and it was kind of scary. I was like, well, I guess I have to see this through.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's called Last Flight Home. So make sure you go check that out as well. Like I mentioned, Todd has a ton of stuff on Drumeo, including his brand new Spotlight show, which is really what we're talking about today. So these are basically like featured documentaries that Todd puts together entirely by himself. They are incredible, and you can check that out for yourself. Let's get right into this. So
all right,
I guess why don't we just start by talking about what is Spotlight, and then we'll get into some of the heroes that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, so Spotlight came about initially when I was doing the coach streams last year. I knew I was going to be on the road, so I started putting together little documentaries of things to be aired instead of me being actually live streaming. And we sort of came to the conclusion, like, hey, that might be a good idea to have a show like that where every month there's a different featured drummer or groups of drummers or something like that. So that was the genesis, so to speak, of the idea.
Yeah.
And when I started putting the Steve Smith one together, I'd amassed like over 2 hours of things. And I said to Dave, I said, do you want one like Godfather length, debut episode, or should we, knock this into 2 episodes? He said, oh, definitely knock it into 2 episodes. Yeah. And then there was so much I wanted to talk about his work in the 1970s and 1980s, so that I just honed in Steve Smith in the 70s and 80s, part 1 and part 2. So those are the very first 2 episodes of Spotlight. And something that I'm trying to do, if there is a story to be told, or if I have some sort of personal connection or personal story to the subject, I like to share that. And in this case, with the Steve Smith episode, in 1982, when I was 12 years old, or just about to turn 13, something like that, I was 12, I wrote Steve a letter through Modern Drummer magazine. And, you never know if that's going to hit. Yeah. And some weeks later, I went to the mailbox, and lo and behold, there was this big, thick envelope from Steve Smith. And he wrote me back a handwritten 6-page letter, including transcriptions from the Jean-Luc Ponty record. And, you couldn't found a happier 12-year-old boy on the planet. Right. And this was right in the middle of Journey Hysteria on their second escape tour of having a #1 record. So whenever I'm writing a younger drummer, I always think of Steve's kindness and how that ripples over the decades and hopefully through me to someone else. So that's a lovely thing.
Very cool. Well, to kick this off, we're going to be checking out a bunch of clips of the drummers that Todd's going to be talking about. So this first one, let's check out a video of Steve Smith from, I believe, in the late 70s, early 80s?
This would be 78 with Ronnie Montrose.
Awesome. Let's check it out.
So I chose that clip to play today because I find it exciting, having been a fan of Steve Smith, but I never saw that. So being able to go back and hearing him play ideas like that just before getting the Journey gig, I find that exciting to see the evolution and where the drummers come from. And as fate would have it, Steve had moved to Los Angeles after the Jean-Luc Ponty gig. He auditioned for Freddie Hubbard and Ronnie Montrose. He got both gigs, and he thought, well, I've never really played rock before.
Yeah.
So I'd like to have that experience. So that's him playing rock for the first time. And as fate would have it, Ronnie Montrose would open up for Journey. And the guys in Journey got to see him play every night. And they went, yeah, we want him in our band. And also I've met, the late Ronnie Montrose a few times because Ricky Phillips, our bass player in Styx, had worked with him and produced his last record. And can I quick tell a Ronnie Montrose story?
Please.
Because this is really great. This is one of the best stories about someone getting fired.
Oh man.
So Ronnie Montrose had played with Van Morrison, and this would have been some point in probably the mid '70s. And he happened to look in the paper and said, Van Morrison's playing at the Paramount Theater next month. I said, oh. So he called up Van. Said, Van, hey, it's Ronnie. And Van goes, Ronnie, looks like rain. Yeah, okay, so I see we're playing the Paramount next month. He goes, no, Ronnie, I'm playing the Paramount next month.
Ruthless.
So that was a beautiful story that Ronnie shared with me. Brandon, looks like rain.
I guess you don't want me here anymore.
Yes, I guess I should hang up the phone now.
It's over.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so cool because like Steve Smith was just out here recently, and hearing him play that rock stuff and him just talking through the lens of a jazz musician, and then to see him do what we just watched is just mind blowing that he can kind of excel in just both of those worlds.
Well, that was some of the big advice that he bestowed to me in that letter from 1982, because he started saying, check out Tony Williams and Elvin Jones and Max Roach. He said that I come from the jazz world, which is why I don't sound like, quotes, just a rock drummer.
Yeah.
That was huge advice for me because, you could... Fate will blow you down certain roads. And luckily for me, I got that advice from my hero. And so I started to delve into these drummers who I'd heard about, but I didn't really know.
Yeah.
And that helped me as a musician to become as well-rounded as I could, to be versatile, to be able to play different kinds of music, to be a working musician and not just doing one thing.
Yeah.
And that was great advice from Steve.
So when it comes to actually playing the kit, are there any ideas, any vocabulary, techniques that you grabbed from Steve or stole from Steve that you actually use all the time, or?
Well, when he transcribed the groove to Enigmatic Ocean, I know I've talked about this before, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. That was the thing that opened up the whole world of ghost notes and fusion drumming. And then I could have a better understanding what guys like Lenny White and Billy Cobham were doing. So he had written the transcription, just bass drum and snare drum, and then said, the right hand goes with the bass drum or on all the ands or whatever ostinato you want.
Yeah.
But the groove on Enigmatic Ocean is... So what that did for me was open up the whole world of just not even having to play that many ghost notes and have it be a fusion thing, but it just kind of it gave enough of a workout to my left hand to be able to play those, and Steve helped make me a man from a boy.
We'll let him know. I love that. Moving right along here, so the next drummer we have is Lenny White, and you've labeled him as one of the pioneers of fusion music. So right now, let's check out a clip of Lenny White, and then we'll chat a bit about how he's inspired you. So before we move on to the next drummer, I just want to let you know that we have so many amazing lessons from Todd available inside of Drumeo. We have Todd's rock drumming masterclass, we have his spotlight show, which we're talking about in this live lesson, and a ton of other amazing lessons from Todd. So if you want to check those out, you can head over to drumeo.com by clicking the link right below this video, and you can get a 7-day free trial.
So my older brother Paul had Romantic Warrior, that Chick Corea, the Return to Forever record.
Yeah.
And that scared the heck out of me when I heard the record of
Rightfully
that.
so.
And that's actually a good segue, because having learned the Enigmatic Ocean groove, that fast groove that Lenny played is very similar, with one of the bass drum notes displaced somewhere else, which changes the face of the groove. So whereas Steve was playing... Lenny was playing... So then, having had the experience of learning Enigmatic Ocean, I could go back and listen to that and go, "Oh, that's what." But there's there's a difference in the bass drum ostinato or cadence, whatever you want to call it. But within the Spotlight episode of the Pioneers of Fusion, there's probably 19 or so or more drummers that we look at from the birth of fusion, and you realize that the musicians that came out of Miles Davis's group, and if you were in and out of Miles Davis's group or recorded for him, that was sort of the big bang. That so many of the fusion pioneers, composers, and or drummers had passed through Miles' band. Obviously, Tony Williams, Lenny White, Billy Cobham, all those guys were in the employ of Miles at some point. John McLaughlin, the guitarist, Chick Corea, Joe Zawinul. Zawinul does Weather Report. Chick Corea does Chick Corea and A Return to Forever. John McLaughlin does Mahavishnu. All those musicians that were in that orbit were Herbie Hancock, were the ones that laid the groundwork for the music that was to come in the late 60s, the early 70s, and how it sort of carried on. And as technology, with better synthesizers and whatnot, bigger, better drum sets, more cymbals. It's cool to look at it under that lens, that like everything kind of came from Miles Davis, who's often thought of as a jazz guy. He was a jazz guy, but he also created this electric thing that was a big bang, so to speak.
And even when you hear like what Herbie was doing in the 80s and even Miles in the late 80s, it's crazy, like the evolution from the small quintet to all this other crazy stuff, like the Michael Jackson covers that he was doing and stuff.
But even like a drummer like Mike Clark that was in the Headhunters. That was 1974. Billy doing Spectrum, the double bass quadrant 4. There's a lot of things. There's real quick a story about that. So the first time I heard quadrant 4, my older brother Paul was taking piano lessons from this famous piano teacher in Chicago, and I went once, and the teacher's son was home from college. He was a drummer, and my mom left me there for an hour. This is back in the days when you could just leave your kid with a stranger for an hour, apparently. But it's got a drum set and a stereo, and he was like, "Hey, so what do you like?" And I just learned, because this is 1976, I just learned the groove to Detroit Rock City.
Oh,
right?
nice.
So that's like. It's cool. I'm not dissing that at all. It's a cool groove. And then he said, "Oh, you like that? Here, check this out." And he puts on quadrant 4. And, I'm 6 years old, and my mind just goes, what? This is possible on the drums? I guess so.
Yeah. How do I do that?
Yeah, no, that scared me.
That's crazy, man.
And then my memory the rest of the day ends right there, because I just walked out of there.
His brain was melted when he left that lesson. That's awesome. The next drummer we're talking about, this is a drummer that's not talked about probably enough. This is Mark Brzezicki. And let's watch a clip right now, and then we'll chat a bit about Mark's playing.
Follow me when I said no. You lay with me when there was nowhere safe to go. We made some friends, but now it's done. I always knew that we would never find the sun. So look away, hide your eyes from the level and hide my love. Look away.
You know, for me, coming of age in the 80s, I guess Mark was one of the most unique voices in rock music, along with like a Stuart Copeland, Manu Katché, that he was right in the middle of those two. He was also a session drummer, you know, played on a bunch of the Pete Townsend records, the Cult, Roger Daltrey, Mid-Year, but he was the drummer of Big Country. And they had a lot of hit records over in the UK and Europe, but over on this side of the ocean, they're not as well known. And those first 4 Big Country records are just treasure troves of incredible, unique drumming that has his own personality, his own heartbeat, his own feel, his own sensibility. There's this definite Britishness or Celtic something to it.
Yeah.
But it excites me. It makes me feel happy. I tell the story in the episode of Spotlight. In 1989, he was touring with Simon Townsend, Pete's younger brother. And I couldn't go to the Chicago show where I lived at the time. I drove up to Madison, Wisconsin, where one of my best friends was going to college. And we went to the gig, and I so desperately wanted to meet him. I'm not suggesting that anyone does what I'm about to say, because you will get thrown out of a place. But I said, I have to meet him. I have to tell him how important he was to me, and I want to shake his hand and meet him. And so it was a club. I just walked backstage. That's something I've never done to this day. I just walked backstage, walked into their dressing room. He could have said, up security, or I could have, there could have been a big dude there that would have just lifted me up and tossed me into the alley. And I introduced myself, and he said, oh, yeah, cool. It's like, just give me 15 minutes, meet me out in the back. We'll have a chat. So I walked back to my friend Dale, and I said, all right, let's go to the back alley. So we went to the back alley, stood there. Mark came out and chatted with me for close to a half hour until the point where the other guys had got in the car, and they're like, Mark, we got to go. And so he split. I met him again a couple years later when he was playing with Procol Harum. And a buddy of mine got me into the after-show party there who was working for Warner Chappell at the time. He totally remembered the Madison night, invited me and my drummer buddies back to the hotel for drinks. We sat there and we hung out, until 2 o'clock in the morning. And, in the show, again, there's that personal connection. The first real gig Mark ever went to was Brand X with Phil Collins on drums. And he met Phil, and he said, I hope to one day be a famous drummer like yourself. And Phil said to him, well, you got to keep the dream, keep that alive. I hope that happens to you. Mark was like that to me. I was just a kid. He didn't, I'm 20 years old or whatever. And he was so nice to me and such an inspiration. And his playing, like, he was sort of the first guy. It's commonplace now. Can I just do a little hi-hat thing?
Please,
okay.
Please, yeah.
He was one of the first guys to kind of. All that stuff is so commonplace now, but I'm talking 1981, 1982. 1983, it would develop, and I heard that. I'm like, no one's playing the hi-hats like that. Of course, there was a little bit of Copeland influence, and then Manu came around in 86, and then like every smooth jazz drummer in the world is hi-hat bonkers from the 90s on. But his drumming was just so unique, and his groove. It's a great pleasure of mine to try to share the great Mark Brzezicki with other drummers that are unaware of him, because it's always been like this little secret club of those who know.
Yeah.
And now, you watch the show, you'll know too.
Now we all know.
Yeah.
There's no excuse. I love that. Next up, we have Danny Seraphine, drummer for Chicago. So let's check out this clip of Danny.
Love only you.
So a couple of things about that particular clip. I'm making some of these shows while I'm on the road, and I wanted to demonstrate how hard that is. And like I know there's a million guys around the planet that are now like with their feet. But back in 1970, if anyone remembers, 70s fashionable footwear with the pedals we had back then playing on a hard floor, like that's an amazing clip of Danny doing that live. But I remember I literally had that record when I was just above an infant. I mean, literally a toddler in diapers, and I would listen to that record. And as I grew up, that was the benchmark for me to try to play bass drum. So I had like 12 days in Las Vegas when I made that clip. So I thought I'd have some fun with different footwear. So there's a little bit of fun, and there's a bit of fun and games in the show. But Danny, other than my father, he was sort of my first drum hero. And his playing on Chicago 2, which is a record that my mother brought home and changed the lives of her 3 sons for the better. Great music, great arrangements, great lyrics, melody, counterpoint, harmony, and the drumming. Danny's swing is legit. When he's swinging that band, and he plays rock like a jazz drummer. Yeah. With the kicks and the jabs and the accents and the counterpoint. So he was a great first role model and hero as a little kid. And along with the Beatles, those early Chicago records helped formulate those earliest musical ideas and notions in my head. And so, Danny's playing on those records are just really great.
Yeah. Is there like a favorite Danny groove that you have, or like any idea that has always stuck with you? Yeah,
on the track Old Days, his bass drum pattern is really hip for like a radio kind of happy major key, friendly song. And of course it starts out with a bucket of fish.
Nice.
The beginning of it is 1, 2.
That's so cool.
So being a 6-year-old kid trying to play, that was again one of those benchmarks for me as a kid. Be like, okay, I can do it. Yeah. And now it's starting to hopefully feel good.
Yeah. Next up, we have Jerry Marotta. So let's check out a clip of Jerry, and then we'll chat a bit about him.
It's one of my favorite songs.
So good.
Yeah, his feel on that is just sublime. So far behind the beat, so fat. You can't grid that. That's just human feel. That's just beautiful. Jerry is a wildly unique mind on the drums, and stubborn and headstrong and opinionated. And I love him for that. When I got Plays Live when that record came out, even though I was aware that Peter Gabriel records prior, that was the one that really made me wake up. And his concept of how he played time, how he played with drum machines, which was still sort of in the infancy back then. Of course, it's totally commonplace now. What he played and what he didn't play was really important. And people always say, oh, he didn't have cymbals. He didn't have cymbals. He totally had cymbals. There's one record that Gabriel said no cymbals. That was his third record, Melting Face.
Yeah.
Phil Collins plays 2 songs on there too, and no one says, Phil Collins never used cymbals. So it's kind of a weird thing that Jerry got attached to this stigma. He totally, well, you heard cymbals there, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Cymbals. But one of the cool things that Jerry does bring is his tribal thing. There's a darkness that Jerry is able to tap into on the drums that's kind of heavy and almost like voodoo scary a little bit, which is why I included that first clip of him in a recording studio, of not too long ago.
Yeah.
But Jerry really matched some of Peter Gabriel's darker things and made him even over the edge into super darkness and very, very murky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a groove like Lay Your Hands on Me from Security, 1981. I'll do my best to try to play it. There's a great tribal thing with, you got Tony Levin, on the stick doing this. You got David Rhodes, and you got Gabriel about to jump in the audience. It's the whole thing is just like, it's almost a religious experience, hearing that and seeing that. Through a twist of fate, I got to meet Jerry through Lawrence Gowan, who's been in Styx since 1999. And Lawrence had done several records with Jerry and Tony and David Rhodes. The first time Jerry came out to see Styx, it was in somewhere in upstate New York, September '99. I was thrilled to meet him because he's sort of like he's not like the NAMM show hangout guy or drum clinic guy. So it's kind of like meeting a unicorn, right? This is Jerry Marotta. He's not everywhere. He's like anyway. So he was lovely, funny, warm, and he kind of did the prerequisite showbiz, like, hey, I might not be here at the end of the night that I saw him before the show. And then at the end of the night, there he was backstage. And I'm like, hey, you're still here. He goes, that was great. I couldn't leave. And that was a compliment.
Like, yes.
I'll always remember. So the last time I saw him, I gave him a hug. And I said, every time I see you for the rest of your life, I'm going to tell you that Plays Live changed my life.
Very cool. Well, before we get into the second half, let's play a track. Let's do another one of the Styx tracks called Coming Out the Other Side off the new record. Yeah, I also want to mention that all these drummers that Todd is talking about, there's full documentaries on these inside of Drumeo. If they're not out right now, they're going to be coming out this year. So make sure you check that out, drumeo.com/trial. And yeah, Todd, take it away.
All right, this one is mostly in 9/8, and then the chorus is in 4 for you keeping score at home.
Nice.
Sun shines through the trees, and I feel that summer breeze. Gotta get up off my knees and seize the day. Sometimes it's hard to see through the fogginess in me, but the truth lies far away and in between.
Surely.
Some interpretive dance at the end there.
The long version.
I love that track, man. It's such a cool groove.
Thank you. We haven't played that live yet, and I hope we will at some point, but it's sure fun to play it here.
Let's get right into the next section. So this is the drummers of Steely Dan, Jim Gordon and Jeff Porcaro.
Charlie Freak had but one thing to call his own. 3-weight ounce pure golden ring, no precious stone. 5 nights without a bite, no place to lay his head. Gonna do just what I please. Gonna wear no socks and shoes, with nothing to do but feed all the kangaroos. When Black Friday comes up beyond that hill, you know I will.
So I chose those two clips here today because even in the show, I go through all the classic Steely Dan records from 72 to 80 that were the classic records from Can't Buy a Thrill to Gaucho, and talk about every drummer that played on any of those records. So with this, Jim Gordon was a session drummer that had a staggering discography. And Jeff Porcaro, one of his heroes, was Jim Gordon. And everyone made such a big deal out of, it's not a big deal, it's a great groove, his groove on Black Friday, but he would always say, I'm just doing what Jim Gordon did on Charlie Freak, like the album before, like I'm just doing that. But both drummers are amazing, and of course, you know, what can you say about Jeff Porcaro?
Yeah.
Every bar he played was just
magic.
$1 million groove on $1 million bar, $1 million backbeat, just fantastic. And that's definitely something that all the drummers of Steely Dan had in common. Even going back to Jim Hodder, who played on the first 2 records. I mean, Reelin' in the Years. I mean, come on. That's the verse groove. The chorus. If you were playing on a Steely Dan record, every bar of every song just had to groove. It had to be great, and a great sense of playing back, but when it was time to hit an accent or kick, you know, to have a little bit of a jab behind it. Tremendous drumming from all drummers on all of those records.
Yeah. I remember I was at a clinic with Peter Erskine, and he said he was working with them, and he said he had his metronome 1 BPM shifted ahead or something, and they could all call it out. They all knew that it was a little bit too fast, and Peter's like, are you serious? They can tell? But I'm not surprised.
Yeah, well, it's like someone with perfect pitch, I suppose. Someone can hear that and just go, well, nope.
It's crazy.
But yeah, I actually do showcase one thing from the live record, because Peter's drumming on Third World Man is just sublime. And in that, like in that hole, you could just drive a semi-truck right through that hole.
And the fill comes in.
Yeah, it's just absolutely gorgeous.
That's awesome. Next up, this is one of my favorite drummers as well, Tony Williams in the Blue Note years. So let's check out this clip first, and then we'll come back. Jeez.
Tony's kind of the source. To me, he's like the father of the school of drumming that makes me like fall off my chair laughing, or just the stuff that's like it's closest to the bone, the closest truth, his absolute authentic self. And again, when I was a kid, I was hip to Vinny and Terry and Steve before I really got turned on to Tony. And then someone played Believe It from 1975. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, this is where that all comes from, because Tony was their guy. Tony was the hero of my heroes. And then 1985, Tony signed to Blue Note Records. He'd taken a bunch of time off a bit to study composition. And so he released a string of records, like 85 through 93. Those are the Blue Note years. His quintet, which was largely always the same band. Mulgrew Miller on piano, Wallace Roney on trumpet, Billy Pierce on sax. And there's 3 different bass players, Robert Hurst, Ira Coleman, and Charnette Moffett. But I would go down to the Jazz Showcase in Chicago when it was at the Blackstone Hotel. Tony would come through with the band twice a year, Wednesday through Sunday, and I would go down at least for 2 of those nights and stay for both sets. I'd watch the first set from the front, and then where you're sitting, to me, that's where I sat and watched Tony.
Man.
Like 20 times.
I'm so jealous.
Playing with this band with that music, which was great. And I'm really excited. I'm putting this show together right now. It's not quite on the timeline yet. But he blossomed into one of my favorite all-time jazz composers with musicians that were just brilliant, and it was a band, Yeah. So to have seen those shows and had those nights and had those records and had those experiences, those are some of the most exciting moments I've ever had as a listener of music. Sitting there, when Tony would start to play, especially in the small room in the Jazz Showcase where it was back then, Tony would start to play on the 24-inch bass drum, the 3-floor toms, big rack toms, and it was this tribal thing. Like the hair on your arms would stand up. It was this fight or flight feeling. It was voodoo, tribal, scary. He'd start to play. He'd always open with a solo. And you had to be in the room to know what that was like. I've been fortunate to see almost all of my heroes. Steve Smith and I were talking about this just a couple weeks ago. To be in the same room, there's no record, there's no video clip, there's no YouTube on a laptop that lets you know what it feels like to be in a room. He had something that was entirely another level of just magic, whatever you want to call it, magic, witchcraft, voodoo, a light, whatever. But he had something that I've never heard anybody do. So I got to see him like 25 times.
That's incredible.
At the Jazz Showcase. And again, I'd always be like, I could have reached out and touched his hi-hat leg if I wanted to.
Wow.
Just one of the greatest education that I ever got was seeing him. And I hope to expose those that are interested in watching the episode of Spotlight, what an unbelievable composer. This music is great. It goes beyond just his amazing, unique drumming, which of course that is, but the songs, music, just like amazing.
Wow. I'm sure there's a million things you've learned from Tony, but is there
one
thing you want to share with everyone?
How much time do you have?
2, 3, 4 minutes.
Okay, all right. Well, I did a solo here, filmed yesterday, that has a theme. Tony would often play themes with the 3-floor toms, leaving one drum silent, the way you'd play like a triad on the keyboards. His flams were otherworldly. The bluzda, which I call the gabluj, because bluzda sounds like this. Bluzda, 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 blush. But a gabluj is gabluj, 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 gabluj. just sounds so pedestrian. Sorry. Opinionated moment. It's gabloosh. I'm going to change it. Start saying gabloosh.
It's on the books.
Gabloosh, 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 gabloosh. But all the... I can't even do it. I can tone your imitation, but that's all the flam stuff, all the drag stuff. I want to talk to 10 minutes about each thing, so I got to keep it moving here. But
if you want to see a full hour-long session just on Tony, maybe we'll bring Todd back just to do that. I would sit through that.
I'd like to see Steve and Vinny do that. I'd happily join the dais and try to hang.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, let's keep moving on here. So next up we have Terry Bozzio. Let's check out a clip of Terry.
So that was Terry Bozzio. That was from Missing Persons from the US Festival in 1983. After Spring Session M, their debut record came out on Capitol Records and tapes. I had to take the Terry episode and kind of formulate it 1977 to 1984 because there's so many eras of Terry that it could have been 4 shows.
Yeah.
You know, if I say Terry Bozzio to any musician or drummer, they might think of the guy from Frank Zappa or the guy from Brecker Brothers or the guy from UK or the guy from Missing Persons or the guy from Group 87 or the guy who, you know, with the giant drum kit, or the guy who invented the slave pedals and the spokes and all the short cymbals and electronic drums in 1984 on the second Missing Persons record. The guy who does solo drum shows in, you know, classical sonata forms and stuff like that. He's a super deep dive. But for me, everything changed. I want to say 1981. The records had been out for a couple of years, but the UK record Danger Money, that came out in March of 79, and then the live record came out in September of 79. And my brother Paul came home with those records, and it blew everything that was on my turntable just off the turntable. So what's going on here with the UK stuff? If you're a fan of prog rock and you're not hip to those UK records, and I know what some of you are thinking, well, what about the UK record with Bill Bruford? Yeah, that's a great record too. Okay, I'm not dissing Bill Bruford, but it's a total different thing. It's a different animal. It's sort of like Gabriel era Genesis and Phil Collins era. It's the same, but it's a different animal. I'd never heard someone, you know, phrasing flams in 5 and a new double bass drum vocabulary with a young, fresh energy and attitude. And I remember talking to my buddy Victor Salazar, who saw them live in '79 opened for Jethro Tull, saying that he was so animated and the cymbals are up high and he would do all this stuff because we didn't have the internet back in those days. You had a record and an imagination. So yeah, he's an incredible drummer. And again, there's a lot of lineage with the Flam stuff that you hear him do where Tony was his guy.
Yeah.
But just a huge seismic shift in my playing and my listening with those two UK records. And then the Missing Persons stuff came out where, it was definitely a post-punk synth pop thing, but with virtuoso musicians. Patrick O'Hearn and Warren Cucurullo were in Zappa's band, Chuck Wilde on keyboards. And a lot of people had a problem taking Dale Bozzio's vocals. But I gotta say this, totally unique, no one else sounded like her, and guess what? That's the way she sounded live, which is a lot more than I could say for probably 1,000 modern-day pop stars who can't make a recognizable sound without technology and 9 producers helping them. So cheers to Dale Bozzio.
Yeah.
It might not be your flavor or cup of tea, but at least that was her, and it was authentic. Yeah. If you check out the episode and dig the Missing Person stuff, look at it under that lens of the time, 1982, 1984. It was very, very amazing drumming and bass playing guitar in a pop framework. And I remember hearing Windows on the radio. And there's some wicked drum breaks in there that are just, there's a roundhouse where he goes, like straight 30-second notes down the tones, but there's one whack on the snare on the way down. That used to be on the radio, folks.
Crazy.
In the great old days of actual human beings making, boy, I sound like an old guy now. Back in my day, we had trombones and oboes,
I didn't say anything.
clarinets, and we walked through snow to get to the gig, and we loved it.
You were talking about some of those Flam-based ideas that Terry plays. Do you have any examples of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, he would do that was somewhat weak. But that's just the idea where he would play a flam into the bass drums. Deka, 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 blah. Terry was one of the first guys to kind of do the whole the hand to foot answer back. I mean, he did that back in the Zappa days. And I remember hearing that idea oh, that's cool. He's playing an idea with the hands, answering back with the feet, back and forth. And that became an exercise of, well, what can I do? Mm-hmm. Can I do this? And sort of treating the feet like another pair of hands in a way.
That's awesome. Moving right along here. We have
Phil Collins is a hero on so many levels. He's such an incredible drummer, drum part composer, player, his groove, his ideas, much less blossoming into the singer that he blossomed into. Yeah. And his voice took on a particular richness around 1980 on the Duke album and that tour. But that first clip, I mean, I think Phil is probably 22 there. But it's one of the greatest stories in rock and roll history that is too good to be true. And I always use this as an example. I mean, Peter Gabriel was such a huge persona, and with all the costumes, and everyone assumed it was him. And there's stories about, Genesis doing gigs, and the record company people would walk right by the other guys and go, "Hey, Pete, nice show, great show." Yeah. Like they walk by Diana Ross's band to talk to Diana Ross. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So later, guys.
Yeah.
So when Peter Gabriel left Genesis, they were left for dead, and the fans, the rock critics, whatever, they're like, "Well, that's it." So they went through an audition process to find another singer. Now, Phil had sung backgrounds with the band, and he actually sang More Fool Me, lead vocals that was on Selling England by the Pound. And boy, there's another one on Nursery Crime, his first record. It's
Yeah.
escaping me right now. For Absent Friends. For Absent Friends. It came back to me like that. So Phil was teaching the other auditioners the parts. And you know, Banks and Rutherford are like, well, it sort of sounds better when you do it. So the fact that Phil Collins, well, okay, I'll give it a go. Trick of the Tail, their first post-Gabriel record, is, in my opinion, an absolute prog rock masterpiece from
Couldn't agree
beginning
more.
to end.
Yeah.
It becomes the most successful Genesis record to date. This would be like Bono quitting U2 and Larry Mullen Jr. going, I'll give it a go. And then the next U2 record with Larry Mullen Jr. as a singer is the most successful U2 record. It's an unbelievable story. But getting back to his drumming, again, like any drummer that has a long career, there's different periods and different arcs and things. The Gabriel era masterpiece, in my opinion, is Selling England by the Pound. I think that from beginning to end is a masterpiece. And his drumming on Dancing with the Moonlit Night. If you think Phil Collins is Sussudio, check out the track Dancing with the Moonlit Night, track 1 from Selling England by the Pound. And if you don't think that guy's a master, I can't help you.
It has one of the heaviest verses I think I've ever heard with the China.
Oh, God, yeah.
Man.
Yes, smashing that China.
So good.
So good, yeah. It's if that doesn't make you, if you listen in the car, you're going to be going 100 miles an hour before you know it. You're done. I better slow down. It's one of those. I highly recommend checking it out. I haven't put at this point right now, at the moment I'm speaking, I'm just gathering the assets for the show, and I think Phil's going to be a two-parter.
I could see that. Is there you want to demonstrate a few things or one thing that you've gotten from Phil?
I'm not playing the In the Air tonight, Phil.
Play us a deep cut.
Let me think. Well, he had Okay.
So good.
I was not prepared for that at all.
That's why you're here, Todd.
But yeah, just and then the dynamics. He was able to play that and keep that burn really, really light, and then build up with a Hagen. The way that he built that, it's just, if you don't like that, you don't like ice cream.
There you have it, folks. Right there. With that, let's check out the very last feature here. This is Alta Forma.
So that's a middle section from a record, the Alta Forma record, which is Antoine Fafard, J.K. Harrison, and myself. This will be, I recorded all the recording sessions.
Yeah.
I think every song was in one take because I was wildly prepared as I like to be.
I'm not surprised.
If I'm given the chance. So yeah, it's all 9 tracks. And the band came apart. We've just broken up.
Not.
We've broken up right now. The band came apart. The band came about, is what I meant to say. Where I had played on Antoine's record, Born Me an Odyssey in 2018. And although there was no vocals in that clip, it's a vocal record. And Antoine had started writing these songs and asked if I knew someone that would be a great singer or someone to collaborate with. And having done my own record with J.K. Harrison, I said, well, you know what? He's the best collaborator you could ever hope for, and he has one of my favorite voices on the planet. So I connected those two guys together. Boom, 9 songs came out. I recorded the record, and I'm really, really proud of this music. So it'll be, it's fun to share this with everyone. And just real quick, there's a pretty, I remember when Antoine initially sent me the middle section, which is all in quintuplets. So I just sort of figure out how to play that along with the bass. So what that is, 5s are. So I played it. So that took a little bit of time to try to get that solidified and feeling good and sitting in with the track. But that's a fun, challenging part in that song.
Very cool. And I think it's cool too that like all these episodes are focused on your heroes and your biggest influences, but to take the time to focus on your own music, and I mean all of these influences play into the way you play drums. And for all of us, everything we listen to affects the way and what we play on the drums. And I think this is cool to shine the spotlight on yourself and see how you put all this together into your own music.
Well, thanks for allowing me the opportunity to take the spotlight. I'm just going to go, I was just over here for a quick second.
All right.
I do this too. No. We are what we practice, and what we listen to helps feed in to what we say on the drums. And I believe there's also experiences that we have, whether it's a walk in the park or a trip to the museum or a life experience or, a loss of a loved one, whatever, all the things that make us who we are, we bring that to the drums. Again, even though I know all the subjects in Spotlight, but to go through them again, it's like watching a movie that you love, that you never get tired of. And then I have to pick out the scenes, so to speak, to share and talk about why it's cool or why it's special, or listen to this. And I want it to be as much as when you're hanging out with your drummer buddies and you're doing like a pick-a-tune session, you're all playing stuff, you're doing, check this out. It's like you're hanging out with a pal, and that's what I wanted this show to be. And it's fun to try to make it like that when you know what it's like to be in a room with just a camera, and you have to make it engaging. That's the fun of it. I strive to have that sort of feeling like you're hanging out, having coffee with a pal, and checking out some music. And maybe you're not familiar with it, and your pal is going, hey, check this out. And I'm going to tell you why this is important or special.
Yeah, I love it. So in a few minutes, we're going to actually watch kind of like a highlight reel of some of the first episodes of Spotlight. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Dude, thank you for having me. It's been a great few days here. It's always wonderful to be here, especially after the last 2 years. To be here is particularly sweet. So thank you, and thanks for watching at home.
Yeah, I love it. So right now, this is a highlight reel of some of the first episodes of Spotlight. Please go check it out. Todd puts so much time and energy into these, and they are absolutely brilliant. I literally watch them like while I'm eating dinner. It's great. You learn a ton, you get to hear a bunch of new music, and like you've seen throughout this entire live stream, Todd has so many insights into all of these different drummers, many of them who you know personally.
It's one of the sweetest things in life is to have some of your heroes become friends. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So yeah, amazing.
Very cool. So check that out. It's on Drumeo. You can get a free trial. Just click the link right below this stream here on YouTube. And right now, let's check out some of the highlight reel.
There was a person from the local music store came and demonstrated all the instruments. And for some reason, I said, I want to play the drums.
Welcome. I'm your host, Todd Sucherman, and today we're going to look at Steve Smith in the 70s and 80s, Part 1. In 1977, Jean-Luc Ponty released the record Enigmatic Ocean with Steve on drums that featured Daryl Sturmer on guitar, who would join Genesis the following year, and guitarist Alan Holdsworth. Now this record, plain and simple, changed my life. Today, we put the spotlight on Mark Brzezicki. Mark Brzezicki's drumming profoundly affected me and has been an influence on my own playing since I first heard him when I was 12 years old. His beat construction, his song-building concepts, fill ideas, hi-hat work, his overall heartbeat and attitude has informed my own choices and decisions over several decades. There was a seismic shift in rock and pop drumming in the 80s, and Mark Brzezicki, along with Stuart Copeland and Manu Katché, were three of the most unique and original voices in drums in the rock music world at that time. Today, we put the spotlight on Danny Seraphine.